Welcome to part 2 of polynomial long division. This is page 3 in the BAT packet. And at any point here, if you feel confident about trying some of these on your own, please do pause the video, work through some of the steps, and then hit play again to check. So our first example is 2x to the fourth minus x cubed minus 2 divided by 2x squared plus x plus 1. Just to get some vocabulary in here, that fourth degree polynomial is called our dividend, and what we're dividing by is called the divisor. So the divisor goes outside what some of you may call the house, and then inside the house, we put the dividend. Now, in both the dividend and the divisor, we want our exponents to count down consecutively from the highest exponent to 0. In this case, there's a missing x squared and x to the first in my dividend. So I'm going to add in placeholders for a 0x squared and a 0x so that when I do start dividing, my like terms will still end up in nice columns together. Remember again, our steps are divide, multiply, subtract, and when we divide, we only compare those first terms. So now I'll divide. 2x to the fourth divided by 2x squared is x squared. I'm going to write that above the other x squared in the problem, and then multiply. So we're multiplying x squared by all three parts of the divisor. That gives me 2x to the fourth plus x to the third plus x squared. And then I subtract my three columns. Now, subtraction is always the trickiest, especially when we have negatives involved. What I like to think about is when you look at that second column, negative x to the third and positive x to the third are not an exact match. So when I subtract them, they shouldn't cancel. They would cancel by adding, but I'm supposed to be subtracting. So if I correctly subtract down the columns, negative x to the third minus x to the third should be negative 2x to the third. And then in the third column, 0x squared minus x squared is negative x squared. And then I'm going to carry my 0x down. Now I'm going to divide again, first terms only. So negative 2x to the third divided by 2x squared is negative x. And then the negative x gets multiplied by all three parts of the divisor. So negative 2x cubed minus x squared minus x. And a good way of checking your division is, again, those first columns should always cancel out. If I didn't get a match between my negative 2x cubes, then I'd know that something didn't come out correctly. I actually do have a match in my second column. Negative x squared minus negative x squared will also cancel out. So in my third column, 0x minus negative x is positive x. And then I bring down the minus 2. So there are two clues here that I'm done dividing. One clue is that x minus 2 has fewer terms in it than the divisor. And the other clue is that it has a smaller degree than the divisor. So the x minus 2 is my remainder, which I'm going to add on at the end. And that's my answer. So I'm just going to add a note in here. This has fewer terms and smaller degree than the divisor. So that's why we stopped dividing there. So next example, and again, at any point, if you feel confident, start doing these on your own, pause, and then play again to check. So now my divisor this time is missing an x to the first in between the 2x squared and the 1. So I'm going to add that in as a placeholder. It's not completely necessary, but this is a lot easier to organize if all of your like terms end up in nice columns together. So again, I'm going to divide, multiply, subtract, and divide first terms only. So 6x cubed divided by 2x squared is 3x. So that means when I multiply by 3x, I should get a 6x cubed, and I do. In the middle, I get 0x squared, and at the end, a 3x. And then subtract. My first column cancels. Negative 4x squared minus 0x squared is negative 4x squared. 3x minus 3x is 0x. I'll actually write that in, and then I'll bring the 2 down. So now when I divide, negative 4x squared divided by 2x squared is negative 2. So when I multiply by negative 2, I actually get the same thing as what I'm subtracting it into. So my remainder here is 0. So we get no remainder. And my quotient is 3x minus 2. All right, and our last example, again, I'll write down our steps here: divide, multiply, subtract. I'm dividing by x minus 2, and in the dividend, there's a missing x to the third. So I'll fill in a 0x to the third where it should have gone, and then fill out the rest, and then we'll start. So 3x to the fourth divided by x is 3x cubed. Those are just using the first terms, but now the whole x minus 2 is involved. So I'm going to multiply. I get 3x to the fourth minus 6x cubed. And then I'll subtract, getting positive 6x cubed, and bring down the 8x squared. Divide again. I get 6x squared. Multiply, and then subtract. Negative 8x squared minus negative 12x squared is 4x squared. Bring down the next number. Divide, multiply, and then subtract. Negative 11x minus negative 8x is negative 3x. Bring down the next number, and then divide, multiply, and then subtract. When I subtract, 1 minus 6 is negative 5. So my remainder is negative 5 over x minus 2. Now normally you could write subtraction where I have the addition sign before the remainder, but I'm going to advise that you always write the remainder as plus even if it's a negative fraction, and we'll talk about why during class.